Good morning. Quali tonali. That's how we say good morning.
I love that. Well, you heard me share a little bit about how I came across your name, and I can't tell you the energy I felt seeing your face. I can get emotional thinking about it because around the world beauty is focused on not just traveling and learning, but meeting women who are leading the conversation of our indigenous rituals, our beauty traditions from around the world. And I just saw you on the cover, and the name of the book is called Earth Medicines. And I just felt so called to reach out to you because you radiated through the computer. You radiated through every page once I got the book. And I'm so excited to introduce you to our community because we need to know about who you are and how important is the work that you're doing. So I want to first, ask you to introduce yourself to our community. This is the Beauty and Travel Summit. And a lot of people think that the word beauty is on the surface, or that the word travel means that you have to travel across the world. But there's so much that we can do right here and right now. And I'm honored and excited to have you part of this amazing summit. So welcome, Felicia. I would love for you to share a little bit about who you are, because we're going to get deep in the next 45 minutes about your full story. But yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So I am here in the Sonoran Desert. My full name is Felicia Cocotzin Ruiz. I am a curandera, which is a traditional healer, somewhat medicine, a woman. I've been on this path for so long. It's all kind of flowed together when I look back and see all of the different things that I've done, because I've had some interviewers ask, well, how did you go from being a chef to a curandera? And I always say it's actually the other way around. I started out as a curandera, really started diving deep into food as medicine, and somehow those two merged. And when I guess was recognized by my community a few years ago, my elders, they were like, we don't know what to say that you specialize in exactly, because we recognize that you're kind of extracting all of these beautiful parts, that help with wellness. And so they really focused on my culinary medicine, which is what they gave to me until they came up with the name. So my focus is it's really helping people decolonize their wellness. It's about helping see how food can really play a pivotal part, especially for people like me, a woman of color, that we didn't grow up with seeing our mothers really partake in a lot of self-care, because of them trying to hustle and do what they needed to do. And so I'm seeing all this this wellness movement happen, and I am really excited to be part of it. And just having the space to speak on your platform, it's really important to me as well, because just like that feeling you got with the book, that was a big purpose. That was a big reason why I wanted to write the book, because I never saw anyone that looked like me writing a wellness book, with all of these different traditions that that we could relate to and also reclaim.
Oh, I have chills. I have chills all over my body because I'm so glad to hear this. And speaking about your heritage, I know that your last name is Ruiz. I know that you share with us your second name as well. Tell me about your background a little bit, because that's a conversation I have a lot within the community, on where we come from, etc.
Well, I am here in Phoenix, Arizona. This is really what I call home, although my ancestral home is northern New Mexico. All of my family has been in that part of the world for hundreds and thousands of years, actually. So, as I talk about in my book, part of my self-healing was really also making peace of that colonizer side that I had in me, which is my Spanish side. And so for many of us in northern New Mexico, we are Spanish. We are also of Mexican lineage. Arizona, New Mexico, California, like this all used to be Mexico, and many of us have ancestors that traveled up during, well, of course, going back and forth, but during the time when New Mexico was being created into a state that it is now. And I also have my indigenous side from the state of New Mexico, which is my Pueblo lineage, Tewa. So I kind of blend everything that I am and put it also into the book.
I definitely took notice. And in the beauty industry, we're having so many incredible brands coming forward that are honoring their indigenous roots. We're hearing for the first time things like nopal, prickly pear, all these amazing ingredients that we've known in the food industry, or not even so much that we've known within our cultures, but now they're coming at the forefront. And what I love about it is that a lot of these brands are from indigenous women, are from women with roots in these places. Like Prado's Beauty is one of my favorite beauty brands. Nopalera by Sandra is a great brand as well. But I wanted to ask you, when we talk about indigenous beauty, when we talk about your beauty, I've seen some of your videos, so please make sure to go watch her YouTube. When you hear the word beauty, what does that mean to you when it comes to your roots? Because there was a lot of beauty in your book as well. It was a lot of food, but I felt like there was a beauty energy in there. So share with me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I was getting my book proposal together, you have to really map out the framework for your book. And so I knew that I was going to have it centered around the 4 elements, but I needed to break it down even more. So the reason why I included beauty was, first of all, I wanted to help redefine what that meant, because to me, it's so expansive. It wasn't just simply about makeup or like your hair, but it really was just about being comfortable in your skin and not even wearing any makeup. That to me is actually quite beautiful as well. So it was just about honoring what it means to walk in beauty. And that really at its core was kind of what the beauty recipes were all rooted in. So maybe it was about getting actual sunlight on your skin. It was about going back to indigenous wisdom. Because I identify as an indigenous person, I wanted the book to reflect what I saw and grew up with, and also acknowledge that there were things that were lost because of assimilation and colonization. And those are topics that you don't really hear connected with beauty. But I wanted people to really see that for us, reclaiming what's so trendy now with self-care was really like a radical act for us, because we were able to start putting into practice I call it abuelita medicine. So like our grandmother's wisdom ways into our beauty rituals. And so that really was so important to me. It was a big part of my own journey in my 20s, especially.
I love that. And I definitely, reading the book, I think that was a mark that I felt really connected to, because I felt that a lot of the beauty rituals I was learning from, people that I really cared about, because I cared about the process of learning, right? But I knew that there was more. When I did research online and go a little bit deeper, I just could not find it. So when I was going through your book and seeing different recipes and rituals that I knew had come from indigenous cultures, it felt differently. It felt like it's a different kind of connection of authenticity. So I thank you for that. And, when it comes to beauty ingredients and beauty rituals, could you share with us one that you feel, in your process in your 20s, when you're saying when you came to learn more about who you were, what was something that kind of stopped you and you really kind of took a pause and a breath? Because I say that because it took me a long time to appreciate the culture of my descent and my heritage. But when I found out, it was like an unstoppable energy. It was like I could not look back once I knew exactly who I was. So I'm curious for you, on your journey, has there been a moment like that for you in your path?
Where I just paused and there's been a couple come to mind. I really do think that rest, like I don't know, I felt like someone had to give me permission to just rest, because we come from this hustle and grind mentality of work that just saying like it's okay to stop and just breathe and rest, that it was lowering my cortisol, and I was recognizing that wow, like I actually feel better. I feel like I looked even better because I wasn't feeling frazzled. So that to me, it might seem like a little tidbit of information, but it really was a radical thing for me to realize, wow, I can just stop and rest, and nobody can tell me, how to do it. I know what to do. Like I can just stop. And it's like kind of like that little inner voice telling us that it's okay to just pause. And I think our ancestors really knew the value of just a nap, or just sitting down for siesta for a moment and then going back and returning to your day. I think the other thing that really stands out for me is in terms of beauty is the value of moisture on my skin. As a person in the desert, I feel like in my 20s, there was so much, and again, not everyone may agree with me, but this is just the research I have done, is we've been programmed to be scared of the sun. And yet, so many people with deeply melanated skin, like our bodies have evolved in the sun. And so it was like I had this moment of, it's okay to go out into the sun. The sun's our life force. However, I am also recognizing I need to protect it in different ways. And so for me, like going back and seeing what were my ancestors really using for skin protection, and what were those formulas and preparations looking like. And that's a huge reason why I love jojoba oil and avocado oil, because those are both ancestral foods for me. So yeah, I would definitely say rest and oiling up.
I definitely agree with that. And I love that you mentioned some ingredients, because what I'm starting to also see in the beauty industry is that there's a lot of products that are coming out now with different kinds of oils, avocado oil, like you said. And I'm like, wow, but we've been using that for so long. So
Yeah.
on your research, was there anything that you were surprised by? I know that you obviously, when you write a book, there's a lot of research that goes into it, a lot of conversations as well. I know nopal is literally an ingredient that I'm seeing all over the place now. But what is a nopal? And I know, if there's anyone to know, it's going to be you, because I've seen a few of your videos where you're
Mhm.
sharing on how to, use it, on how to do different multiple things with it. But can you share with us a little bit about the nopal? Because it seems that that might be a staple
Mhm.
ingredient in your
Yeah.
kitchen, but maybe there's more.
Yeah, so the nopal, it's the prickly pear cactus pad. And so I like, it's kind of become very trendy in the food and wellness space within the last, I would say, 10 years. But it's definitely something that is part my lineage. It's part of the Mexican flag. That's how deep this story goes with our connection to the nopal. And so the reason why I love using it is because, again, so much has changed because of colonization. A lot of people with the food system, they're becoming diabetic. There's a lot of health related issues coming up because of food. And I always just go back maybe what our grandmothers were eating and growing and using for their own medicine and kitchen healing. And the nopal was something that, it's like, I'd like to tell people if they've never had it, it's kind of like okra, like the inside has that gooiness. And
Hmm.
so it can be used on your skin. It can be used to drink, to help with preventing diabetes. You can eat it just for all of the fiber. And so I love those types of foods when we just go back to the actual root, which is eating the nopal, eating it, the actual cactus pad. And I think what's happened now is a lot of the wellness brands that are creating the products, sometimes they powder or make it like into a powder and
Hmm.
things like that. And I think that it does have a lot of benefits, but there's something really I don't know that I treasure that our grandmas knew that this was medicine in all its forms. Hmm.
And what I think is really special about some of the videos that I've seen with you is that it's, and I learned this, I think, when I went back to Ecuador, which is where my father's from, is that it's not just about creating the recipe or the ritual. It starts at the moment where you spot what it is that you want
Hmm.
um, to come with you, right? It's not just about taking the nopal or flour. It's really honoring it first and giving its gratitude in order to really open to give you that love and that care that we're all searching for. So I love that you cover that in your book, because I think that people want to be part of this, but it's important to know that it really starts at the foundation of the process, from that morning, that alignment to allow your ancestors to come in. And with your book, you talk about the seasons and the importance of how every season is different. Can you share a little bit about earth medicine with us? Because I would love to know the story behind that book. And then I want to also then later jump into the book a lot more, because when I saw you, it was very inspiring to me, because a lot of our women who travel have dreams of writing a book. So anyway, let me not go on my tangent, but tell us about earth medicine, because it is about the seasons, and what should we know about the seasons?
Right. So I won't jump into too much of the book process yet, but
Hmm.
I will say, like, I always knew I was going to write a book. And so when the time came, and again, I had to kind of map it all out, I really needed I needed like my framework. And so I was breaking it down into seasons. I was breaking it down into the elements. I was like trying to figure out, how do I bring indigenous wisdom and put it in a book. And because indigenous wisdom is always entangled with the elements, with the seasons, with the moon cycles, with all of these things, it made sense for me to do that. My teachers have always encouraged us to eat seasonally. I mean, that was part of all of our ways, no matter where we were from, was, preparing for the winter. Or in my case, because where I am in the desert, we would prepare for the summer when things aren't necessarily growing here because it's 120 degrees. So
Hmm.
it was like perhaps a little bit backwards, but it was about working with the seasons. And in doing so, it also helped me with like saying, okay, the weather's really great. I'm going to be outside more, which means I'm probably going to have more dirt particles on my skin, or I might have, I might realize I need to be more hydrated. I need to keep my skin even more protected because now I'm in this season of being outside. And so it was a really helpful way for me to bring the seasonality of indigenous wisdom into the book.
I love that. And it's funny when you say that you were sitting with the book and figuring out the seasons, then maybe the elements. I've been in that process for 6 or 7 years now. And when I looked at your book, I was inspired in many different ways, which is so crazy, because it's just a cover, right? And then you look for the inside pages and you just realize that this wasn't an overnight story to be told.
Mhm,
Because
mhm,
I think a lot of us who especially that are part of Around the World Beauty, we have traveled the world. A lot of us
mhm.
together have traveled, and our story continues to evolve from every trip that you go to, every country you meet, every person that is part of this destiny that we're on. And the story keeps changing, and that's kind of what's happened to me. Is like one day I'm writing about this way, and then the next day I'm like, no, the book has to go that way. And then there's trends, right? There's what's popular at the moment. Divine timing all kind of goes into it. But when I saw your cover, I just felt that, like any success that people see, it didn't start yesterday.
Mhm,
It had a long journey. So can you tell
mhm.
me about that process? Because I think that's what is going to inspire a lot of us, because also we want to write books. We want to be part of this voice that's in the world about beauty, that's
Yeah.
authentic, that's real, it's redefining it, but nothing happens overnight. And so, yeah, please, if you could share a little bit about your journey with getting this book out there, because
Mhm.
if it wasn't until maybe I think 2020 and everything that happened during that time, I feel like maybe our voices maybe still wouldn't be at the forefront the way they are now. So what has been your
Right.
experience in that?
Well, I think experience is probably the key word here. Now that I'm in my 50s, this book is a culmination of 30 plus years, right? So this wasn't like, I'm going to write about what happened last year. This was like, I'm going to write about what happened when I started on this whole wellness journey and why. And so it does actually take people around the world. I share all of the different stories because I've been very privileged that I was able to save up money and go travel to different places. I like sharing all of those different wisdom ways that I learned along the way naturally and implemented them into my own personal wellness routine. And so when I was able to, like I said, put that framework together, I was like, oh, this would be a perfect spot to include that time I was in Morocco and we, my sister and I got lost and we did this and that. And, when we got the clay or whatever. And so it was kind of like I was able to put my whole life experience in the book. And I always knew I was going to write a book. I honestly didn't know what it was going to be about, but I knew deeply in my bones that I was going to write a book. It just so happened that it unfolded that I got the book deal right before the pandemic hit. And so even the book itself was not created in 6 months. It took over 2.5 years to write, photograph, get done. And so this was all happening during the pandemic. And so as I was even writing all of these entries, I couldn't help but to really think like, what is this going to be like on the other side? And we're still in it, but the book also, it motivated me to really want to share my process and my journey for wellness because I saw what was happening around us and people felt so disempowered. And I wanted them to just have some information on how they could go out to the front yard if they had a nopal cactus and cut it. And like, let's get some things that are going to support our immune system or help us with a glow. Or maybe people weren't going out and doing the same things that they were before. But hey, if you're at the store and you can get an avocado, we can make an old school avocado mask together. I wanted to give people what has worked for me.
I love that. And what I noticed too is that you have a background with Ayurveda, and I love India is one of my favorite places in the world. And you combine a lot of the wisdom with Ayurveda, with indigenous practices. How was that for you? Obviously, you're sharing with me that it came natural because you are a woman of the world. And it's interesting because now that I hear the name earth medicines and hearing your story, it kind of hits differently. Because we are the earth. It doesn't just end here in America. The earth is universal, correct? So
Right.
now, because I was, when I first saw, I was like, oh, it has to do with indigenous, the earth. Okay. But now that I'm hearing your story, I'm like, no, we are one. We are a global.
Right.
A
And
global world.
so I'm glad you had that little moment there because it means that at least what I'm doing is working. Like I'm helping people see, to expand their vision because earth medicines, yes, it's earth medicines from around the earth, right?
Mhm.
So earth meaning all of these elemental things that we can use, but from indigenous people around the world. And Ayurveda is something that I've studied. When I was in massage school, we got to choose a scope of practice we wanted to specialize in. And so I chose Ayurvedic massage. Well, this was in 1994. And a lot of people didn't even know what Ayurveda was here in Phoenix, Arizona. And yet it was this thousands of year old indigenous practice to India. And so like I said, this has been a culmination of life experience. And so just even understanding that way of healing the body through Ayurveda, I was like, wow, so many of what they talk about for their own wellness is so similar to what I am seeing in my own indigenous community here. They're just called by different names, or maybe the technique is a little bit different, but they were very similar. And that's what I was wanting people to see, is that, yes, Indigenous, I think, has now taken on like it's now how we may think of like a Native American person, but there's Indigenous people in Australia, Indigenous people in India, Indigenous people all over the world. And we all come from incredible wellness ways.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you said that, because that leads me to so many questions, but I'm like, okay, keep it on where I wanted to go. But, you know, my family's Central American, South American. And one of the things that I feel like I've experienced is that the word Indigenous, I find that we always want to put things in boxes, and this is the only way that it is, right? And when I went to the Indigenous March during, I think 2019 or 2020, like when I was really learning about my Indigenous ancestors, I was scared to be canceled. I was scared to speak up. But I know that when I go to the Amazon in Ecuador, my ancestors are there with me, and we're practicing very similar wellness practices. You know, Ecuador to me actually inspired me launching my business Around the World Beauty, because I said, people need to know that we're amazing. With nothing, we're amazing. And I started exploring that a little bit more and a little bit more. And then when I started doing these marches in DC and learning about other community leaders with amazing voices, I wanted to understand, well, am I part of this? I feel in my heart that I am. I feel that in my culture I am. But now it's becoming a word where it's just either have to be in the box or you're not in the box. Do you consider Central Americans? I've been to so many museums trying to search for this answer, and I kind of have to probably be guided with my heart. But I know a lot of our girls are born mostly in America, or in cultures where we are a mixed explorative background. And, you know, who's to say that someone isn't from somewhere, right? It's their life experience. But would you consider Central Americans and South Americans Indigenous as well? Because I know what you just said before, but I just feel like I have this question I should ask you on your thoughts.
Yeah, so it's a very complex question. So this doesn't turn into a 1 hour panel discussion because I speak on this on different platforms. So I think what's important for anyone from the areas that you're talking about is, let's just backtrack and look at the word America. Like, when people, I mean, that's not even what we call ourselves, right? That was a name that was given for where we now live. So that's why Central America, South America, North America, like, these aren't what we called ourselves. We didn't have borders and things like that. We were very migratory. And of course, there are some Indigenous cultures that have remained intact. And I think that's our own feeling that maybe, yes, we're not trying to pretend we're part of that community, but we are descendants of that community. And it's important that we are uplifting them, because we're also healing our own ancestors, our own lineage. We are also healing a part of ourselves, being that many of us grew up. I can't say this is my experience. I came from a family who was very proud to be Indigenous, and we knew what we were taught, right? But that doesn't mean everyone in my extended family had the same experience, depending which city and where you grew up. I mean, there's a lot of colorism. There's a lot of racism, and within even our own circles of healing, because of colonization, we've been taught that being Indigenous is not a good thing. It's not a positive thing. And this was based on what was happening to a lot of our people. And so the fact that we're out there now advocating for our communities, it's also very healing for us. And so, yes, very much so in the space where your family is from, we have some of the most beautiful cultures in all of those areas you just talked about. And so that's why I also make sure that people, that they don't see it as a nationality. You can still be Mexican and be Lebanese, descent. You can be from Ecuador and be African, you know, you can be all of these nationalities. So it's a matter of like, how do you self-identify? Which ancestors are you uplifting? And when you are looking at yourself, what do you feel?
I really appreciate hearing that, because something that comes forward is, you know, color, language, and all these different elements of being alive are so prominent in cultures, right? And you see the similarities, like you mentioned, like in India with color, in indigenous communities with turquoise, and there is a overall world experience that really allows us to tap into the beauty of what life is, because like you said,
Mhm.
before there were borders, there were none. We were very
Mhm.
migrant, we were moving around. So I think that, you know, when I went to Ecuador, I learned Quechua, which
Mhm.
I never knew existed. And then
Mhm.
once that world opened up to me, I said, there's so much here to learn. And so when it comes to someone wanting to learn about who they are, you know, I always see there's appropriation and then there's, you know, appreciation. And with your book being a vehicle, like a vessel to introduce people to your teachings, what do you hope people do with the information? Because we've seen what they've done before, but moving forward, I think now we're aware of the culture appropriation.
Right. So I want to just backtrack a second because I want people on the that are viewing today that they really also understand that there is cultural appropriation and there's cultural misappropriation. And so now we are in a space where we're understanding that, yeah, perhaps showing up in a headdress, that's not, a very wise thing to do, if especially if that's not of your culture. So to me, that's cultural appropriation, right? It's not even appreciation, it's just disrespectful. Misappropriation is when you're taking something, and you're like Columbusizing it, you're
Mhm.
calling it as your own. And so I think that's where the difference is, that sometimes those get blurry, because even in what I do, as a curandera, it's a 500-year-old living tradition. And so we're taking medicine ways of the Spaniards. We're taking medicine ways of the West Africans that were brought and enslaved. We're taking the medicine ways of the indigenous people of central Mexico when they got there. We're taking the medicine ways of the native people in the Southwest where I'm living. And they all absorbed one another and they culturally appropriated one another's wisdom ways in a positive way. So I
Mhm.
don't want people to think cultural appropriation is like this bad thing if it's used in a positive way. And again, this is a 500-year-old absorption. So this didn't happen overnight. The misappropriation is like by me saying, oh, we're going to be doing all of these stretches and all of these sequences, and it's called Southwestern stretching, when
Mhm.
really it's the practice of yoga. And
Mhm.
now I'm calling it my own and misappropriating what it is. And so I really just want to make that clear because I feel that in these spaces, there's a lot of confusion on that.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a powerful way of explaining it. Because even within my business around the world beauty, I truly love the world. That's where I learned who I actually was and my place, you know. I always talk about the story of feeling finally like the other when I went
Mhm.
to Asia for the first time. But there was a time during my business where I didn't know how to move forward anymore because I didn't want to feel that I was taking away from any of the cultures that I'd been to. But
Mhm.
I love them. Like I love them so much. Like, you know, I'm Latina, but at the end of the day, I love every culture and what it's done for me, you know. And but I think you hit it right on the mark, is giving the credit where it's due and not trying to just change it for your benefit. We have
Yes.
to always give credit, and I say wisdom is the key to expansion,
Mhm.
because we all want to be better. And I feel like a lot of our viewers today, they love I love going into my tribe's home, right? My Where they have decorations and things, and you can see the world is there. They
Mhm.
appreciate it, they love it. But it's definitely come to a place where they're fearful because they don't want to ever look a certain way in someone's eyes. But with the wisdom, if we do the education, if we talk to those experts, read the books like Earth Medicines, we can learn how to better educate the future as well. So I appreciate so much for you sharing that.
Yes, yes. And I just want to acknowledge that your ancestors, when, or your family, when you were saying you go back to the tribe and see the decorations and things, there's this beautiful sense of pride that I think that many of our elder family members, or even the ones that may still be back home somewhere, like there's this beautiful sense of pride that I feel that once they get to, quote, America, like the United States, that we often see that it's left behind because they're trying so hard to fit in. And that's why I always say that what happens in us trying to fit in, our beautiful ways are being just repackaged and sold back to us. And so it's so important that we always acknowledge whatever it is that we have learned and seen back to the people that it came from.
Exactly. And I've heard you mention the word healer a few times, and I saw some of your stuff online as well. Tell me about yourself as a healer, because I saw that you do a Mayan Bajo ritual, and you do different things that are associated with being a healer. Tell me some about that, because I'm a little fascinated.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm on the healing. I work providing healing, but I want everyone to know that it's really hard to explain what I'm doing sometimes. If I was to be in an elevator with someone and they're like, "So what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh gosh, like we have to go up and down the floors a few times to explain." But it's, I tell people I'm a traditional healer because I always use that word as often as possible so they understand that I'm taking um I'm utilizing indigenous ways or traditional earth medicines in my healing practices because I think the word healer is used too in a way that feels like all the power is on the healer. And I want people to see that they're actually their own healer. And so it's about empowering them. And so with the example of the bajos, which is a vaginal steam, a yoni steam, it's I don't necessarily only work with women for that. I actually work with men as well who are perhaps having fertility issues or prostate cancer and things like that, because steam is utilized in many of our cultures as a very healing way to carry the medicine, because we're working with fresh herbs and dried herbs, and when we boil it and it's creating this steam, it's getting into and permeating your body in different ways than if we were just to soak in a bathtub, because our pores are opening differently. And so I do provide that for primarily women, but it's not simply for fertility and things like that. I also work with women who have experienced sexual trauma. It's a very powerful way to help someone heal their emotional self with that area of their body.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because it reminds me when I was in Thailand, and I think even Korea, where I experienced sort of Chinese medicine in that way as well. And then when I go to Mexico, I experience a temazcal in Guatemala as well. And it's really the power of fire, the power of steam, the power of
Yes.
cleansing the mind, body, and soul, which was very apparent throughout the book as well. But Felicia, I wanted to say thank you, because I feel like I learned so much about you. I learned so much about your community and your voice. And I'm hoping that people will go out, get your book. But if I could ask you, what are 3 things that you feel is really important for the reader to understand about the earth medicines? Because I know that we're all on this path, on this journey to be aligned, right? And some people don't really even understand what being aligned means. Most of us are running, like you said before, from one thing to another. But with earth medicines, what is your hope, or 3 things that you hope the reader is going to get from this book and with who you are? Because there's more to just reading the book, right?
Yeah, it's about putting it into practice. It's really understanding. I mean, if I had to choose 3, I would want people to really see that this is an act of decolonizing wellness, that it's really a lifestyle practice. This isn't something that just happens overnight, and things take time. I would really want people to see that it's a book actually of empowerment. It's for many of us, whoever we are, like many of us feel very disempowered. So it's a very, I wouldn't call it a self-help book, but in its own way, it's really an empowering book. And I guess it's like just seeing that you really can be your own kitchen healer. It's really breaking it down to just get back into the kitchen and see that that you have access to so much, but you have to invest a little bit of time and energy and learning. And once you get into it, it actually it opens your mind to, wow, what have I been putting on my body, or what have I been eating? Because you start seeing things differently.
Exactly. No, I'm in awe of it all. And to end this amazing, conversation with you, and we love to call these beauty conversations, beauty stories. What does beauty mean to you? Because you are a beautiful woman, no doubt about it. I can't even believe you said that you're over 50. I can't even believe it. So obviously you have some tricks and things that we need to tune into. We got to get the book for that. But what does beauty mean to you? Because you do radiate, not only on the outside, you radiate even through a book. So what does it mean to
Well,
you?
thank you for saying that. I've always felt that's one thing that everyone has always said about me. They're like, you have a very youthful energy, and I don't think they mean that in like I don't know, like I'm partying or anything. I just have, I think, a something about me that does radiate from within, and I think that has been again, it's a lifestyle practice. I've said to people before, I don't wake up and I'm like, well, I'm a curandera from 9 to 5, and then now I'm back to just Felicia. It's a lifestyle. It's about really tapping into what we innately know makes us feel beautiful. What makes me feel beautiful is 8 or 9 hours of sleep. I've always said that. I also feel very beautiful when I'm well hydrated. My skin feels differently. So it's like just redefining what beauty is. And I know that seems like a real cliche thing to say, but we've been programmed to believe what is beautiful. And just the fact that my hair has been like this for over 10 years, and now there's like this incredible movement of people like going gray. I'm like, oh, I've already been that way, but I'm
Mhm.
happy to see you all catch up to me, right? So it's like saying, let's really see what makes you feel beautiful. And for me, coloring my hair didn't feel beautiful. I
Mhm.
actually felt like it was making me look, I don't know, older, and I wasn't even about like trying to not look older. I just was like, I'm gonna let my hair go gray, and it made me feel beautiful, and it made me feel beauty. So in one of my Dene, which is a Navajo teachers' ways, they do share this beautiful way of looking at things called Hojo, and it's all about seeing beauty before you, beauty around you, beauty behind you. It's about seeing beauty everywhere, and of course within you. And so it's not about physical beauty, but it's actually just feeling, seeing, expressing. Your words can be beautiful. It's all of it. And I embrace that.
Absolutely. And I think you being a world traveler as well has led you to this understanding that beauty is always all around us. And yeah, I
Mhm.
really think that once you tap into that energy, that perspective of the world, there's no way that you can ever not radiate from like a shining bright star, And that's why I think travel is such an essential part of who we are in our stories,
Mhm.
because it is all around us. But sometimes if you don't leave your space, you won't be able to
Mhm.
experience it. You have to go out and be willing to fly to see
Yes.
a little more what's possible. So, Felicia, thank you so much for this amazing interview. I'm gonna go fly into my next into the next panel right now. But how can we support you and your beauty journey? Because I'm enrolled. I know anyone hearing this is going to be enrolled and watching, but where do we go to support you and just say thank you for your time? Because you really are like a voice that we want to support around the world beauty. And we will be doing something together very soon. So make sure everyone stays checking our newsletters, because I'm definitely excited to have you part of the Around the World Beauty experiences, because you just bring so much to women like us who are on that journey to find beauty all around us and within us. You know, not only are we beautiful on the outside, but we are beauty all around us, and we want to learn from each other to get deeper into that practice. So
well, thank you for asking how people can support. I would say find the book. That's going to be the best thing, is to uplift a woman of color. You know, in the publishing world, it's very different, and I am feeling all the love from all of platforms like these that are helping get my name out there. And I've been very fortunate, because it has almost felt like this grassroots thing that has unfolded. And I've now been able, because of people, you know, following through, is I'm getting into spaces I only imagined, to be honest with you. And that's important to me, because supporting my work means that we're also supporting a younger generation to come, because I would have loved to have seen people like me in my 20s with a book like this. And so buy the book, buy one for a friend, and buy one for a stranger. That's what I say. And you can buy the book anywhere. You can also go on my website, which is Kitchen Curandera. I have so many recipes on there, beauty, herbal, food, postpartum, all of the work. I hit every platform that I work with. And you can buy the book anywhere.
that's amazing. And you just inspired me. And I want to say, whoever is watching right now, if you actually post in your stories about this conversation, you follow Felicia, we will make sure to do an amazing giveaway for someone that's really supporting this conversation. And that will be sponsored by Around the World Beauty. So we'll be sending you a book by you. And I'm so excited. But Felicia, thank you so much. I can't wait for us to reconnect. And thank you guys so much for watching. I cannot wait to continue this amazing day of amazing beauty conversations. And stay tuned for our next beauty panel.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.